My name is Heather. After graduating from college, I landed a full-time job at a cafe. The company I joined had branches all over the country, and I had to relocate to various places, regardless of the season or duration. In my 6 years of working there, I moved 3 times. While everyone around me was getting married, I remained single, and my parents started worrying about my future, asking, "Do you plan to stick with this job forever?" One day, while I was at the bar, I happened to run into Anna, a regular customer. I was venting my concerns about marriage during our conversation, and she suggested, "How about meeting my brother sometime?" I thought it was a joke because we had been drinking, but she was serious. The conversation progressed, and I ended up meeting her brother Mark. That was how we first crossed paths. Anna and I got along really well, and it was no difference with Mark, her brother. We started dating soon after, and around 6 months into our relationship, he proposed to me. I was overjoyed, but also overwhelmed by anxiety. Marrying him meant quitting my current job. Since his company didn't require any more transfers, I would be staying in one place. His family lived nearby, and his income could comfortably support both of us. So he wanted me to quit my job after marriage. It seemed like there was never an option for him to relocate for me. I also thought it would be challenging to continue my current job with irregular shifts, considering the possibility of having children in the future. Still, I couldn't help but feel reluctant to let go of what I had built up until now. I needed to make a decision. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then accepted the ring he offered. 13 years have passed since then, and I have spent those years regretting that decision almost every day. The first few years of our marriage seemed good, but everything changed after our son Ken was born. Mark became constantly irritable when he was at home, adopting an arrogant attitude. With me struggling with unfamiliar childcare and chronic sleep deprivation, household chores started piling up. At first, he said, "I know it's tough." But as time passed, his dissatisfaction grew. One day, after I fell asleep without waiting for him to return from a drinking outing, his attitude took a sharp turn. He looked down at me and said, "Who do you think supports your life? You're only taking care of the child, and you laze around." From that day onwards, he completely withdrew his cooperation in childcare, making it a one-woman show. With no family nearby, I couldn't ask for help. Ken's incessant night cries and my chronic lack of sleep caused headaches and dizziness. At times, I even considered going back to my parents' place, but I had made the choice to be with Mark and live in this town. I couldn't show weakness, so I held back. During those tough days, Anna and my in-laws became my pillars of support. Anna and I maintained a close relationship, even after I married Mark, and she visited us once a month since Ken was born. My in-laws also adored Ken, and they frequently visited our home, reading to him and playing with him. Their house was just a 15-minute drive away, so it was convenient. The house we lived in was a gift from my in-laws when I was pregnant. While I initially declined their offer, they explained that they had planned to purchase their barrier-free house from the beginning, considering our future together. Since they would eventually live with us, the house was under my father-in-law's name. While they looked after Ken, I could take care of the household chores, and chatting with my parents became a great way to relieve stress. I was very grateful for their visit. However, Mark felt differently. He didn't like the idea of his parents visiting, and indirectly expressed his disapproval. They got the hint, and they eventually stopped coming to our house. Despite this, they still invited me and Ken. Around the time Ken entered the second grade, he expressed a desire to play Little League Baseball. He loved playing catch with his dad, and when he heard that one of his classmates had joined a baseball team, he wanted to as well. I had always wanted to let my child pursue their interests, but I couldn't immediately fulfill Ken's wish. Joining a baseball team required not only a membership fee, but also money for equipment, uniforms, and monthly fees. We didn't have the financial resources for it, despite the fact that we should have been able to save a substantial amount each month with no rent and Mark's income. Our savings were almost non-existent. Mark frequently went out drinking and spent money recklessly. Drinking itself wasn't an issue, but he wanted to show off, frequently inviting a few of his junior colleagues and covering their expenses. Ken wants to play Little League Baseball, I said, handing him a paper with the cost listed. Mark glanced at the paper briefly and replied,
"How are you planning to come up with all that money? You know we don't have that kind of cash."
He said it with a cold tone. Anticipating his reaction, I decided to share what I had been thinking all along. "I'm thinking about getting a job." He frowned unhappily, but reluctantly agreed as long as I didn't neglect the housework. 6 months after I started working, we finally saved enough money to let Ken join the baseball team. Although my responsibility increased with laundry and driving him to practices, Ken became more energetic and alive, practicing his swings, playing catch with friends, and constantly discussing baseball. Just seeing his smile made it all worthwhile. However, this new life brought its own set of problems. Mark didn't appreciate my income. I chose to work part-time at the same cafe I used to work at as a full-time employee. Even though I had been away for a while, I quickly advanced after finishing my training because I was familiar with the place. Mark didn't expect me to earn much during the short time Ken was at school. When he saw the numbers in my budget spreadsheet, he was astonished.
"You're making this much?"
he exclaimed. "Yeah, but after setting aside money for Ken's baseball and future savings, there's hardly anything left," I explained. But he turned away and headed to his room without a word. From that point on, his attitude worsened rapidly. I was treated like a housemaid, and he frequently raised his voice at our son. He used divorce as a threat, and often said unreasonable things. But I knew my income alone wasn't enough to support Ken and I, so I had to comply with whatever my husband demanded to protect my son. Then, after nearly 2 years of Ken playing baseball, something happened. Mark took Ken's baseball bat and slammed it against the walls and floor, breaking it. It happened on my payday, and Mark was already in a bad mood. But that day, he seemed even angrier. As soon as he came home, he threw his bag, plopped onto the couch, and yelled,
"Hey, where's dinner?"
Since I was in the middle of preparing for the next day's youth baseball, I said, "Hold on a second." Then he replied,
"Who do you think is providing for us? And Ken can play baseball because of me. You must make me your first priority."
Startled by his loud voice, but also very annoyed by his previous words, I retorted, "But I manage the baseball expenses with my salary." He fell silent, grabbed Ken's baseball bat from his bag, and started smashing it against the wall. I instinctively covered my head with my hands and shrunk as small as possible. When the noise stopped, I cautiously opened my eyes to find a large crack in the bat lying in front of me, and he was glaring at me intensely, saying,
Don't get cocky just because of some part-time job.
I looked at him and realized it was time to end it. My pain wasn't about ending the marriage. It was about the broken bed before me. The bed I had bought with hard-earned money in between my busy schedule. The bed Ken had cherished. To think I had spent over a decade with someone who would resort to anger like this left me feeling empty. Despite my mixed emotions, he continued.
You won't really go through with a divorce. You will be the one in trouble if we divorce. I dare you.
He said with a smirk, handing me over divorce papers. This wasn't the first time he has done this. In fact, he has done this countless times before. I never thought I would actually accept them. But this time, I took them without hesitation. Enough of being made a fool of. I gathered my essentials, my wallet, phone, and such, and left the house with Ken. As soon as we were out, I told Ken that if I went back to my parents' house after the divorce, he would have to quit the baseball team. Plus, there was no guarantee we could continue living as before. However, my son said, Mom, it's not your fault. The one at fault is that guy. Clearly angry at his father. Then he added, I can play baseball anywhere. And when I enter middle school, I can join the baseball team. I thought he was still a small kid that needed my support. But I didn't realize he had grown up enough to say such things. I went straight to the city hall and submitted the divorce papers. Once they were accepted, I suddenly felt calm, but anxiety about what to do next overwhelmed me. Going back to my parents' house at this hour was difficult. Besides, I only had the bare minimum of belongings, and there were Ken's school, baseball, and my part-time job to consider. I didn't know where to start or what to do today. Sensing my anxiety, Ken said, Why don't we go to Grandpa and Grandma's house? I hesitated, thinking about relying on my in-laws after the divorce. But after much deliberation, I called them. I explained that I had divorced Mark and shared the reasons behind it, as well as my concerns about the future. My in-laws responded, Come to our house right away. Upon arriving at their place, they apologized profusely. We feel horrible for making you and Ken go through hard times because of our stupid son. She was in tears. After putting Ken to bed, I gave them the details of what had happened. Then Anna arrived, probably because my in-laws had invited her. She was angry, saying, What a bonehead my brother is! Both my in-laws and Anna sided with me and Ken, not with their son Mark. When I recounted everything that Mark had done and said in the past, and what happened today, my father-in-law raised his voice and said,
Call Mark! We were straightening him out.
It was already close to 11 p.m., but Anna immediately called him and told him to come over. Perhaps because Anna, who was usually easygoing, used a stern tone, Mark didn't dare to resist. He arrived at my in-laws' place soon after. Their house had a large rectangular table with enough seating for 4 on each side. So Anna, myself, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law sat on one side, while on the opposite side, Mark sat alone, resulting in a 4-to-1 setup. When he arrived, he looked pale and nervous. My father-in-law, speaking in a calm but very low voice, asked Mark,
Don't you have anything to say to Heather?
Mark, trembling, replied,
It's about me and Heather. It's none of your business, Dad.
Then, not only my father-in-law, but also my mother-in-law and Anna started berating him simultaneously.
Enough of this!
You apologize to Heather right now. Do you even realize what you have done? Suddenly Mark, who had been timid just moments ago, became assertive. He directed his anger at me and said,
You! Don't think you can act all high and mighty just because you have my family on your side. You can't survive on your own anyway. I might consider forgiving you if you apologize now.
He could have ended this mess if he had apologized. But despite this situation, he continued to look down on me, which left me speechless. There is no forgiving or turning back. I've already submitted the divorce papers. I confronted him with a dose of reality. His eyes widened in disbelief, and he shouted,
What? What the hell did you do?
He yelled and pounded his fist on the table. Then my father-in-law intervened, saying,
You are not the one to be asking that question. What the hell did you do to Heather and Ken?
He raised his voice even louder and emphasized,
We have heard everything.
In response, Mark glared at me and muttered,
You're despicable.
Then my father-in-law spoke again.
The despicable one is you. You look down on your own wife just because you're working, and you have left everything including Ken to her. You even make her work a part-time job, and you broke the vow that Ken treasured.
He raised his voice.
Dad, just shut up. No, I can stay quiet. Apologize to her.
This kind of back and forth between father and son continued for a while. Mark eventually grew impatient and said,
If Heather is so much better than your own son, why don't you just live with her? I can live on my own. I don't need anyone's help.
Hearing this, his father glared at him, saying,
All right then.
Mark hesitated for a moment and said,
Whatever.
Then, as if on cue, Anna happily chimed in. Well, maybe I should live with Heather too? Even my mother-in-law added, You should start preparing for the move. Seemingly supportive of Anna's idea. Mark was stunned by their responses, perhaps thinking his mother would stop Anna from moving in. He started getting flustered, saying,
Wait, you guys.
But then his father said,
What? You just said we could live with Heather.
He stammered.
Wait a minute.
But all three of them replied in union.
No, it's settled.
Finally realizing his situation, Mark turned to me as if pleading.
Can't you reconsider?
I coldly dismissed him, saying, There's no way I will reconsider, and brought up the topic of child support. He protested.
Why do I have to pay child support?
But his father promptly replied,
It's only natural that you will pay.
And he fell silent. I was surprised when his father later offered to put the house we had lived in under my name. Of course, Mark objected, saying,
So where am I supposed to live then? Give me this house if you are giving Heather that one.
However, his father insisted.
You said you could live on your own. We've already decided to sell this house. Since you can live on your own, you can figure it out yourself.
Then he delivered the final blow, saying,
If there is anything you need in the house, gather it by morning. Everything else will be disposed of.
And so, Ken and I, and what had now become my ex-in-laws, my ex-father-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, and Anna, began living together. Explaining this complicated situation to others is not easy, and it seemed like my parents thought I had gone crazy when they heard the story. But for now, we are managing to live well. Ken continues to go to school without transferring, and he's still on the baseball team, maintaining his usual lifestyle. I work as a contract employee with no relocations. Even if I have to wake up early or work late into the night, My ex-mother-in-law takes care of the housework and chores, so I'm grateful for that. Mark lost his place to live and rented an apartment, but now he has to pay rent and child support for Ken. He can't freely spend money as he used to. His juniors, who were once interested in him for his generosity, have left him, and it seemed like he's spending his mundane days just commuting between an empty home and work.